In 2016, the UK voted for Brexit, and those in favour pointed to this.
I see very clearly just how much what we do is shaped by decisions not taken by our ministers, but taken by officials in Brussels.
This was echoed in 2019. Boris Johnson's election manifesto promised to take back control of our laws. The Conservatives won that election, and as the UK's departure from the EU approached, Boris Johnson again talked about UK laws.
We've taken back control of our laws and our destiny. We've taken back control of every jot and tittle of our regulation in a way that is complete and unfettered.
But this issue isn't settled. After Brexit, the UK took thousands of EU laws and copied and pasted them into UK law. They affect all sorts of everyday areas. For example, toy safety regulations dictating how toys are marketed. There's also animal welfare. The current ban on certain battery hen cages is from an EU law that the UK still uses. There are also hundreds of regulations affecting nature and the environment. And last year, the government, under Boris Johnson, announced a plan to deal with these inherited EU laws. The press release told us Prime Minister pledges Brexit Freedoms Bill to cut EU red tape. This would make it easier to amend or remove outdated, retained EU law. The Times called this a bonfire of EU laws designed to boost the economy. And the man in charge of this was Jacob Rees-Mogg.
This is about getting the advantages from Brexit. We don't now want slavishly to follow the diktats of the EU. That would be a way of losing all the advantages.
Mr Rees-Mogg calls them diktats, but the UK was an EU member and involved in the process that produced these regulations. Mr Mogg also set out a deadline. Unless ministers intervened, these inherited EU laws would expire by the end of 2023. Now, a few things have happened since June last year. Boris Johnson stood down, Liz Truss stood down, Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, and he's just as committed to dealing with these laws. This is a video from his unsuccessful leadership campaign in the summer. That's EU legislation being shredded. And this week, his spokesperson said that Mr Sunak wanted EU laws dealt with as quickly as possible to ensure Britain was run by our own rules. But there are concerns about how this is being done.
We're getting rid of a huge amount of EU law almost overnight. We're not sure if we know all of the law. We could find out later that law has disappeared without us knowing about it.
That's right. Some laws may disappear at the end of the year without first being checked, which plays into this broader concern.
I think the most urgent requirement at the moment is for there to be some certainty about what is actually proposed in terms of what is being kept, what is being changed and what is intended to be repealed altogether.
Alexandra Mitzi is an employment lawyer. She's not sure what's happening, nor is the head of the Wildlife Trusts.
The problem is there's so many. We're talking about well over 1,000 bits of environment legislation and regulations. Even the government cannot tell us what the long list is.
Now, the government insists it'll maintain all environmental laws, but it's not clear how many laws overall are affected by this bill. Here's a government dashboard with the total number, but ministers say it needs updating and that so far 3,200 EU laws have been identified and that actually the total will be closer to 4,000. And reviewing 4,000 laws is a big job. Jill Rutter from the Institute for Government tells us to be done properly, the bill requires mountains of detailed work by civil servants, policy advisors and legal teams and regulators who are already hit by vacancies. The government, though, says departments have been working on this for months. And if there are concerns about the sheer volume of laws that will expire, the Labour Party wants to talk about parliamentary scrutiny too.
This is nothing to do with Brexit and everything to do with an audacious ministerial power grab.
It will be ministers, not MPs, who decide which laws stay or go. Labour calls that a power grab. But the government says opposition to this bill is really about opposition to Brexit.
The crunch is, if you don't like Brexit, if you didn't like the way the Brexit vote took place, you're not going to like any elements of this bill.
But it's not quite that straightforward. The think tank, the Hansard Society, is politically neutral. It says what's happening is tantamount, with just a few caveats, to a do anything we want power for ministers. And then there's David Davis. He's a former Brexit minister, and he says when we talked about taking back control, it wasn't removing control from Brussels to give it to Whitehall, it was taking back control to give it to Westminster and our sovereign parliament. Brexit was sold on the idea of restoring sovereignty to Parliament, And the government insists this bill will firmly re-establish our parliament as the principal source of law in the UK. The story of this bill is not done, though. It passed one vote in the Commons this week, and now scrutiny, and we expect opposition will follow in the House of Lords. Then it's back to the Commons once more. This is the UK's parliament, taking decisions about the UK's laws. The question is whether there's time to properly assess what to keep or change before these EU laws expire at the end of the year.